Welcome to Module 2, Using Facebook in Virtual Education. This is one of our 6 examples of how to use social technologies in your virtual lesson activities. In this particular case, we're going to explore Facebook. As I've mentioned in the other examples, if you're very familiar with Facebook, you can skip through some of these basics and go straight to the lesson ideas. And then you can even watch the brief demonstration of a few features in Facebook I'm going to show you, or you can skip that and just start experimenting with Facebook altogether. But for those of you not as familiar with Facebook or how you may want to use Facebook in virtual education, let's start with some basics. Facebook is one of the social technologies that does have an age restriction in the US of 13 years or older. This actually is older in some other countries, so definitely take a look at what the restrictions are in your particular country. Now on privacy, Facebook has done a lot with privacy. And in fact, you can be very specific how you limit people that can be your friend, where you interact. You have not only your normal just Facebook account, but you also have the ability to create pages and groups. And in groups, you can lock down entirely who is a part of that group and how do they interact. I'll actually show you that when we get into the brief demonstration. Now the Facebook style, probably many of you are already using Facebook. If you're not, the style is, there's no limit on length, but it is definitely an informal style in Facebook. People do like to add a lot of visual assets to Facebook. So you will see pictures, you will see a lot of articles, the reposting of examples and jokes or cute videos or even political news. So Facebook has no length and limit on length, but it definitely has a feeling of informality. And people tend to stay short in the length of text that they post because they want people to actually read their posts, but do include a lot of resources and links. Now the pace in Facebook, I would say, is slow compared to some of our other technologies that we're exploring, like Twitter, for example. But slow can be a good thing for asynchronous activities. So if you're looking to work with your students to support projects or have them journal or share reflections over a longer duration of time, Facebook may be a great option for you. It's not used very often synchronously though. We don't see people having guest speakers or ask an expert or other kinds of things in Facebook like we do in Twitter if that period of time that you're interacting with that guest speaker or expert is a very short period of time. That said, you could create accounts or have experts be accessible to your students over a longer duration if they have questions, knowing that those questions might not get answered right away, but once again over time. And that can be a good way to expose other people to the interactions that your students are having while still protecting them and while still utilizing Facebook in its style and pace that it's known for. Now a few more basics. Facebook is great for making observations, sharing ideas for feedback, and even sort of updating your status on doing work. So if you have, once again, a culminating project that students work on over a longer duration, a series of weeks, Facebook could be a great place where you can have students go post their updates, share their questions, share resources that they're finding as they're doing those projects. It's also a great place to ask for help. Once again, like we've seen in some of the other social technologies, you could also create a group where students reach out with questions when they're getting stuck on assignments or homework at night that then others can come in and respond to. Now some drawbacks from Facebook. Facebook has one of the most, I'll say, negative reputations among children, or at least lots of people think or are concerned about the privacy of children using Facebook. And also, what does this encourage? We've seen all sorts of things from bullying to children being followed by people they don't want to be followed by. That said, of course, Facebook can be very safe if children are educated on how to manage their privacy and are monitored in managing that privacy. But because of that negative sort of attitude towards Facebook and the use of Facebook with children, this might be a difficult technology for you to implement with the faculty and school officials. It might also be difficult with parents. So just be aware of that. You might have to work through that. And then also, because Facebook is very personal for students, they use it a lot of times in their own lives, particularly the 13 to 18-year-old set. Now it might be hard for students to shift gears, to understand that how they may interact with each other in their class setting academically needs to be different than how they interact in a personal setting. So it might be a little harder transition for students, but I think it's a good one for them to understand. Finally, Facebook is a little bit slower paced. There could be ebb and flows to the engagement. There'd be a lot of posts and then a few posts. I think it's interesting. We're already in week 2 of our course, and Facebook has less activity than Google Plus and Twitter does in this particular class. So I'm curious to see how this will play out over the duration of our class, and where the more of you tend to aggregate or want to interact with one another. That same kind of phenomenon can happen depending on how you set up your activities with Facebook. Now, speaking of setting up some activities, here's some sample lesson ideas for you. I mentioned this slightly before. You may want to think about having students post in Facebook their ongoing work associated with a project and the reflection of that work. You could also have them curate collections of content that they're uncovering that support their work. Here's great articles I'm finding on this particular historical event. I'm trying to apply math to the real world around me, and here's visual examples that I'm seeing as I'm doing that. Things that are in an ongoing reflective, kind of like a journal, but a really short journal where the community then can really communicate and interact and comment on what the students are reflecting on. You could have students do research activities and post content and ideas and what they're uncovering for those research activities in Facebook. And then, especially if you have students working on similar projects, or maybe you have students working on one big project and they each have aspects of that project, by sharing their research as they're going in Facebook, you're able to then encourage students to understand the other elements or dimensions of the project as they're doing their own. Could be a great place for questions and coaching, providing support to students, helping them or guiding them as they're working on stuff outside of your classroom or outside of your synchronous activities. And it's also a great place to post, once again, other media outside of just text, especially things like pictures and video and other things that they uncover. Now, synchronously, and as I mentioned before, Facebook hasn't been used synchronously a lot in education, or really even just in the social networking world in general. But you could use Facebook synchronously if, let's say, you did a field trip, an all-day field trip, and you went to a local museum. If that museum allowed you to take pictures, some do without a flash, students could be taking pictures, or you could have them do a scavenger hunt where they have to go find examples of a list of things, and then they upload those examples to Facebook from whatever devices they have during that field trip. Now, that kind of synchronous example, it's a little longer term synchronous example, and it does necessitate the need for devices, right? You need to have these devices to be able to take these pictures. But it is an example of something that you could do. If you don't have any of that, if all you have is an internet connection and students have computers, they can still use Facebook as they're examining the world around them. They might just not be able to use their own generated images. They may need to just find those that they can through the internet and other sources. Now, a question for you before we dive into Facebook. I'm thinking about using Facebook to support that field trip I was talking about at a museum. Once again, the museum lets me use a camera without a flash. Now, what should I ask students, though, to post to Facebook? What kinds of things should I encourage my students to share with one another? And then what should I tell them or coach them around commenting on each other's posts? What should they do after their visit? How can I use this information or this experience during that field trip and using Facebook as a way to solidify or deepen ideas and knowledge that my children are developing in my course. So let's just jump into Facebook and point out a couple of things. First of all, I want to show you what a page looks like. So for those of you that haven't subscribed to this Emerging Trends and Technology page, you may want to just subscribe to it if you have a Facebook account so that you can at least see what a page looks like. Now, I do not advocate using Facebook just strictly as it is, where students have their own personal accounts and then they're going and posting their own experiences for your classes through their normal account. I encourage you to, if you're going to have them use their normal account, their everyday account, their personal account, that you either have a page that they go to post their reflections specifically for your course, or you have a lockdown group. Now, the difference between a group and a page in Facebook is that a page is now public. Anybody can see it. In fact, pages are traditionally used for businesses, but in this case, I wanted this so that people outside of our class could come to our page and see what we were doing and maybe even contribute. Now, a page is found only by giving somebody the link to that page or by inviting somebody to join the page. So you can limit how that page gets distributed. However, people could stumble across that or find that page if they knew what they were looking for. Or if it was associated with you and they were your friends and friends of friends, and depending on how you have your own privacy set up, they may be able to back into it. Now you can see here on our page, I've got a basic description. I've hidden the admin panel. To make a page, it's a couple-step process, and Facebook walks you through that page. You can ignore a lot of the business stuff that it'll ask you for. I did. But then I just set up this page that you see here. And in this page, you'll see that we have students posting to this page. We've got a number of you. Neil Brown's posting, Tenzin's posting, Anath is posting some great ideas. Now, for those of you that have never used Facebook before, you have the option of liking and commenting on any post. So if you wanted to, thank somebody or respond to a question, I think Anath had a question about how do I do this with minimal resources, you could go in and you could comment on that. Now you can see posts by others. You can also see the posts that the page owner has. And when I post personally, I post as the page owner, not myself, which is great because it's distinguishing between my interaction with the class and then my own personal interaction in my own Facebook world. Now I am using my same Facebook account, so I could switch to myself in here if I wanted to, but in this case I wanted to manage my accounts all in one space, so I could even see how does it feel to have to make sure you separate personal from academic and how not to accidentally post in the wrong place. Now, if I also wanted to create a group, I can do that in a number of different ways. But if I actually want to create that group, I want to think very closely about the kinds of permissions I set for that group. So in fact, let's talk just really quickly about privacy. If I click on the wheel is usually the trick in most social technologies. I can go into my privacy settings. And this is where I think you want to make sure you're coaching your students through how to set the appropriate privacy, particularly if you're going to have them use their own same personal account, or then if they create a separate account for their academic experiences or a new account, making sure that they set the right privacy is important. And you'll see here just not only who can see stuff, but how can they be contacted is really important in setting privacy. And Facebook has done a lot to ensure privacy. In our resources page this week, there's a couple of resources focused on Facebook and good coaching advice for helping children set the right privacy settings in Facebook. Now, I did mention before that you can create a group as well. I encourage you to do that. It's just like creating a page. You just select groups and you make your group and you choose, once again, whether that group is open to anyone that can find it. It is open to people that want to request to join, and then you have to give them approval to be a part of the group, or if it's closed altogether. And the only way somebody can see that is if you give them an invitation to come join it. So that's a little bit about Facebook and how to use it. I hope that you take a second to go explore Facebook and think how it might work in your own class, and then report back to us in the discussion forums. I think you probably sensed a little bit of my own hesitation with Facebook. Of all of the different social technologies, Facebook's the one I personally worry about the most, in that it's the easiest to make mistakes in how you're posting and to blur personal and academic. In some places that's totally fine and okay. In other places we really want to protect our children and have to be careful. So while I think it's a great social technology and people can use it and have used it effectively, this is my technology that I'm probably a little more cautious of, and I encourage you to definitely play with it before you implement it.